Gananam tva ganapatigam havamahe kavim kavinamupamashravastaman Jyeshthārajam brahmanam brahmanaspatana shrunvannotibhisseeda sadanam Shri Mahaganādhipataye namaha Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave namaha Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Apyayantu Mamangani Vak Pranas Chakshusrotramatho Balamindriyani cha sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuriyam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranamastva Nirakaranam mestu. You can combine both. Anirakaranamastva Nirakaranam mestu. You can correct it. You please correct it in your book. Anirakaranam mestu. Me avagraha stu. That is me astu. Anirakaranam mestu. Tadatmani nirate. Ya Upanishadsu dharmaste mayi santu te mayi santu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dear friends, we have just commenced the Kena Upanishad, that is the Pada Bhashyam written by Shankaracharya. We just saw the first couple of lines, and then it is just introduction only. We are still in the introductory part of the Bhashya. Let us read the next line. Sarvam etad yathoktam karma cha jnanam cha samyag anushtitam nishkamasya mumukshoho sattva shuddhyartham bhavati sakamasya tu jnanarahitasya kevalani shrautani smartani cha karmani Dakshinamarga pratipattaye Punaravruttaye cha bhavanti Swabhavikyatu Ashastriyaya pravrutya Pashvadi sthavaranta Athogati syat. Okay, we will see this particular portion, because I think that these 2-3 lines only will engage almost 45 minutes today, because all these words are totally new to somebody who is new, who has just come afresh and then newly starting to listen to say the Upanishad class. If somebody has already read or if somebody has already heard the Gita classes or the Kenopanishad classes, so these words will be familiar. But for somebody who is totally starting afresh, all these words will be totally new. So it is my duty to explain these words again. If somebody has already heard, you please take it as a revision. But then I have to explain these words. Here, let me say what are the new words we are finding here. Sarvam etat yathoktam karma cha jnanam cha. All these things. In the last class, we had a discussion on what is what the earlier portions of the Samaveda say. This is supposed to be the 9th Adhyaya of the Samaveda. Prior to that, what is all been dealt with in the earlier Adhyayas? In the earlier Adhyayas, many karmas have been told. Karmas means various rituals, various types of various yajna type of things. All these things have been told, and also some upasanas have been told. In the last class, we had a general picture of. I gave a general picture of the upasana. What exactly is upasana? Say the Devata upasana, Aham Grahopasana, etc., etc. I gave a very fairly an overview of upasana. So that is where we stopped in the last class. So today we have to have an overview of what this karma is. Here the sentence is Sarvametat Yathoktam Karmacha Jnanamcha. So all what all has been explained, Yatha Uktam, Sarvametat, all this what has all been explained, Karmacha Jnanamcha. Karma means activity. Jnanam. Jnanam does not refer to the Brahma Jnanam. We have to remember that this word Jnanam, we have to understand according to the context. It is used in two meanings. Jnanam at the absolute level refers to the knowledge of Brahman, that is self-knowledge, or the knowledge of the self or knowledge of Brahman, knowledge that Brahman is the same as Atma and vice versa, Atma is same as Brahma. So that is the knowledge, that is the supreme knowledge. So that is one level. And for Jnanam, occasionally we also use in the sense of Upasana. That is Devata Jnanam. We say Devata Jnanam is the knowledge of a particular, say, the notion of God, the notion of a particular deity. So in the supreme consciousness of the Brahman, we visualize various forms called deity. You call it Rudra, Vishnu, Brahma, etc., etc. Say doing various cosmic functions. So these things are called Devatas, and these Devata Jnanam. So the Tattva, the concept of that particular God, the concept of that particular deity, we have to understand that concept, and then you do Upasana of that deity. So this particular deity who is visualized in that supreme consciousness, he is a limited form. So this delimited form you worship. And that supreme form you are supposed to understand, realize. There is no worship once you understand that, because you understand that you are the same. Once you understand that you are the same, it is like touching your own feet and doing namaskara to yourself. So that question of worship does not arise in the case of a totally realized person. He may be doing all bhakti and all that by force of habit, and then out of sheer love for that divine form, like we have seen that Madhusudana Saraswati and very eminent seers, he was a very great Krishna Bhakta. So like that, it may continue in that fashion, but then it is not compulsory thing for such a man. But then if he is a Gruhastha, of course he will still be doing all this puja, etc., because he will be a role model for all others. So he will continue to do that puja, Upasana, etc. But then, in the last class, what we saw was that Upasana, what are the limitations of that Upasana? And in that Upasana, I said this, you are visualizing a limited type of Brahman, or a limited type of that supreme consciousness in a limited form you are visualizing, and then you are trying to worship it. So this is something which is to be worshipped. So that is why it is called Upasya Brahma. This limited form called God or deity or some God form or God notion is something called Upasya Brahma, that which has to be worshipped. And the Supreme Brahman is something which is called Jnaya. Jnaya means something which has to be known. So that is what? Karmacha Jnanamcha. This word Jnanam here refers to that Upasana or worship. Karmacha Jnanamcha. Then Samyak Anushtitam. If it is very, very properly observed, Samyak Anushtitam, if it is properly observed, then Nishkamasya Mumukshoho Sattva Shuddhyartham Bhavati. For somebody who is a Mumukshu, Mumukshu is one word which you have to know. Mumuksha means Mokshe Ichha Mumuksha. That is the desire for liberation, desire for freedom. From freedom from what? Desire from various types of bonds which our mind has created, around us. Manushya, the very word Manushya means one who gets bound by his own mind. Mind goes out and then it binds itself with so many objects. Manasa sivyate iti Manushya. In Sanskrit, the etymology will be very interesting. If you see the etymology of words, it will be very interesting. Manasa sivyate iti Manushya. The mind goes out and then binds itself to a particular object. So likewise, the man gets bound with so many external objects. I see a nice chair, so my mind gets bound to that. I want to acquire this chair. I see some nice car and I want to acquire that car. So something like that. So mind ties down a man in so many bondages. So in this Jnanam, in the case of a real seeker, what does he seek? He wants liberation from all these bondages. So one way of getting, one way usually people think is, let me fulfill all the desires, so that all the desires will, be satiated. So suppose you want a car, yes, when immediately a car comes. You want something else, immediately it comes. So like that, whatever you desire, it comes. So then will your desires be satiated? They will not, because by next year that car will be, say, out of that model has gone and a new model has come. The i4 has gone and i5 has come. So like that, every day there is a new desire, there is a new say thing to be acquired. So the once this i4 which you loved once upon a time, or 1 year ago or 6 months ago, already becomes an object of dislike. So this i4 you want to throw away, and then you want to get i5. So that is the nature of desire. That is the nature of human mind, and that is the nature of desire. That is the nature of the whole world, which is promoting so many desires in a human being. Because even if there are no desires, the TV and the mechanism, the publicity mechanism is so huge. So it has it has such an overwhelming presence that they will create so many desires in a human being. So what is the real way to get rid of all these things? The only way to get rid of all these things is to know about their real nature, their real tattva. The real tattva, what is my mind, what am I, are these things really required, are they nitya or anitya, are they eternal things, is it the only thing in life, what is it I am supposed to know in life? So once you question that, once you question about what is the ultimate goal in life, then all other things become trivial. So that is what is called Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. And then one who desires to know that reality, and then one who tries to get rid of all the bonds, he is called a mumukshu. Mokshe Ichha is called mumuksha. One who has mumuksha is called a mumukshu. So for this mumukshoho means for such a man, and such a man should also be nishkamaha. Nishkama means desire free. So he has got over that stage of desiring and clamoring for various objects, external objects. So for such a man, sattva shuddhyartham bhavati. Sattva shuddhi means that is purification of mind. This karma and also upasana, they contribute to the purity of mind of a person who is desire free, and then who wants to get liberated from all the bonds. So that is the meaning of this line. I will read one more line and then go to explain what exactly is karma, what is the overall picture of karma, etc. So the next line says, Sakamasya tu jnanarahitasya. Sakamasya tu means, on the other hand, Sakamasya, for one who is still having those desires. Desires for what? All these rituals which are mentioned in the Vedas, they give two types of results. One is Abhyudaya in this world, and one is Abhyudaya in the afterlife, not Nishreyasa. Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa we should not confuse. Abhyudaya in this world, suppose you want wealth, and then you perform some yajna, and by that you may get some wealth. Or you do some putra kameshti, you want a son or something like that, you do some ishti and you get a son. Then this is something which is in this life. Or something else, Swarga Kamo Yajeta. You do some yajna with an intention to get some Swarga, a heavenly life after, say, death, after the fall of the body, let us say. So that is something which is there, which is available at a later date. It is there in your account. All that, say, merit of that, what all the virtuous deed you have done, it is there in your account, and then you will get a heavenly life. So these two types of things will be there. So that's such a man who desires, say, the result of that action or fruit of that action is called a sakama. The opposite is nishkama. So for such a man, for sakama, jnana rahitasya. Here again, jnana means upasana. Upasana rahitasya. Somebody who is not, say, doing that upasana. So I told you yesterday in the last class, that is, karma is the primary level, and upasana is a slightly secondary level. Karma is purely asking for just a question of give and take with the God. I do this puja, you have to give me this. So that is a sort of trade. It is a trading with God. Whereas upasana, where the mind is slightly elevated to a higher stage, the mind is trained to respect that deity, the mind is trained to understand that deity, the mind is trained, or the individual tries to acquire the good characteristics or the good traits of that deity. So that is the level in that upasana. So upasana is a sort of intermediate stage between ordinary karma and that final jnanam. So this is this man is trying to emulate that God form and then cultivate the virtues and then identify himself with that say deity. So that is the level. So but then here Sakavasya tu jnana rahitasya, for one who is not even having that thing, then kevalani shrautani smartani cha karmani, this shrauta karmas and also smarta karmas. Shrauta means those which are mentioned in the Veda. Shruti. Shruti means Veda. Shrautam is something which is mentioned in the Veda is called Shrauta. Smarta means something mentioned in the Smruti. Smruti, from the word Smruti, the word Smarta comes. So the rituals which are mentioned in the Vedas and the rituals which are mentioned in the Smrutis. So there are types of different, there is a slight difference. Shrauta karmas are favored by some people, Smarta karmas are favored by all these Gruhasthas. So like that. Shrauta karmas, they belong to a slightly higher category. This Smarta karmas, they are for the householder, for the regular householder to be done almost every day. So such a things. All these karmas, then what happened to them? All these karmani, Dakshina marga pratipattaye punaravrtaye cha bhavanti. Dakshina marga pravrutti. Dakshina marga, southern path, Dakshina marga. All these contribute to the southern path for such a man. I will just tell you what is the southern path and what is the northern path, etc. Dakshina marga pratipattaye punaravrtaye, that is return. Return from the place where you have gone. You have gone to some destination and from that destination punaravrutti. So I will also explain that. What is that punaravrutti? Punaravruttaye cha bhavanti. Then the next line we read was Swabhavikyatu ashastriyaya pravruttya. Tu, on the other hand, Swabhavikya, that which is there as just natural Swabhava. Swabhava is base instincts, basic impulses, the human basic instincts. So let us say food, sex, things like that. These are the basic impulses. So these basic impulses, ashastriyaya pravrutya. Ashastriya means that which is not in accordance with Shastra. Whatever is that pravrutti means action or activity. This activity which is not in accordance with Shastra is called ashastriya pravrutti. So with that, and what is that ashastriya pravrutti? Something which is just following your natural impulses. You like something, you go and grab it. So like that. Ashastriyaya pravrutya. Pashvadi sthavaranta athogatihi syat. So he will take birth as a Pashu. Pashu means an animal. Sthavara or a tree or something like that. Sthavaranta. Pashvadi sthavaranta. Starting with Pashu and ending with some small bush somewhere in the jungle. So like that. Sthavaranta. Adhogatihi. Adhogati means a downfall. Adhaha means down. Gati. Movement. Downward movement. That is downfall. Adhogati syat. So here we have seen several words which are totally new to a new student of Vedanta. What is that? Karma is a one new word. Jnanam, of course, Upasana, though I explained in the last class, we will see the comparison between them. Then Nishkama is another word. Then Sattva Shuddhi, that is purity of mind, is another word. Then Sakama is another word. Then Dakshina Marga is another word which we have to explain. Dakshina Marga, that is the southern path, and what is the northern path. Then Swabhavika Pravrutti, all these say the basic instincts and all that, that is one thing which we have to see. So now I will just give a general picture of what is this karma. Karma means action or activity. So in Vedanta, whenever we say karma, we are not referring to the karma which the activity which we normally do in our day-to-day life. Like you have come to your office, then at the end of the month you will collect a paycheck. Then you will do some look into some files and dictate some notes, etc., etc., and then you go back home. In Vedanta, when we are referring to activity, we are not referring to this activity. So this is one thing which we have to clearly keep in mind. Then what is it that we are referring to? We are referring to all this activity is something which is controlled by some sort of social contract, some sort of law or something like that. Suppose somebody, he does a government job, it is controlled by law. Somebody who is a soldier, it is also controlled by law. So that is something which is covered by law or some social contract. This is something different. Then what does Vedanta talk about? It talks about some ethical action which is not controlled by law. There are various things in human life which are not controlled by law. For example, when you say if a child is told, when you get up, okay, you just do some namaskara to the god, or you have to say respect your parents, you have to respect your teacher, matru devo bhava, pitru devo bhava, acharya devo bhava, all these things we say. All these things, there are certain, they are all the things which are unenforceable. Law is something which is enforceable, ethics is something which is unenforceable. So this unenforceable aspect, which has a lot of social interface, so all this is the ethical action. Suppose you are asked to do some dhanam, Shraddhaya deyam, Ashraddhaya deyam, Riya deyam, Shriya deyam, Samaveda deyam, etc. etc. When you do this dhanam, you have to have this particular frame of mind. You should not throw something in a fit of arrogance. You have to give some due respect and then only give. So various other things. And when a Atithi comes, you should not treat him, you should not dismiss him as some sort of, dismiss him like that. You have to give him a proper seat. You have to behave in such a manner. So all these things, they are also mentioned in the Veda. For example, if you go to Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a whole Anuvaka, there are several Anuvakas like that. So all these things, not only Taittiriya, in several other places, there are so many instructions straight in the Veda and also in the Smrutis. So all these things form part of this karma. Because all these karmas, they are either intended or they will give some result. Suppose you are doing some particular yajna or something like that, and in that process of yajna you are giving so many donations. Yajna does not mean just pouring something into the fire. In the process of yajna, you are supporting so many people in the society. There is somebody who is getting all this from the forest. Somebody goes to the forest and gets what all you need from the forest, various types of sticks, etc. Somebody else brings ghee from a milkman brings ghee. Some other man brings some cloth. Some other man gets some pots. So the whole village, if you visualize a rural setup, the whole village is involved in that particular yajna, because everybody in that village is in some way or the other connected with some activity. And then there is somebody who is chanting some mantra. So all these people, it is a sort of a small economic activity also, and then you are doing the yajna for the sake of welfare of society. So this is one thing which we see. So like that, all these karmas which are ethically enjoined, not legally. Legally there is no enforcement, but then they are ethically enjoined on you. So these things, they produce some good result. They are supposed to give you some good result called punyam. That good result is called punyam, which is something which is unseen and which is there in your account, let us say, and then which will it will give result after the fall of the body. Suppose you do the totally opposite. If you do the totally opposite, then naturally it will give some bad result, and that bad result is called papam, and that papam will take the person to a bad state after the fall of the body. So that is what is called punya and what is called papam. So when we see this whole say our Vedic tradition, we see that three types of things. There is something which is a prescribed karma, which a person has to jolly well do. That is taking care of your guests, etc. When somebody comes to your home, you have to necessarily treat him well. Then every day we are supposed to do what is called Pancha Mahayajna. Every householder is supposed to do Pancha Mahayajna. What are those 5 yajnas? That is Atithi Yajna. That is when some guest comes, you are supposed to treat him well. Then Deva Yajna. You are supposed to worship your deities. Then Pashu Yajna. Pashu Yajna means, in olden days, at least in every house, there used to be some cattle, etc. You have to take care of the cattle in a proper way. You are not supposed to starve them, or you are not supposed to leave them like that. You are supposed to take care of them, take great care of them. That is what is called Pashu Yajna. Then Bhuta Yajna. Pashu Yajna and Bhuta Yajna, same, one and the same. Deva Yajna, Pitru Yajna is another thing. Pitru Yajna means you are supposed to offer some sort of tila, etc., water, etc. to the forefathers in respect. You have to just remember the forefathers and then pay respects to them. Then what is called Swadhyaya Yajna. This is most important. Swadhyaya means, suppose you are in a particular tradition, you are in some Rigveda tradition or Samaveda tradition or Yajurveda tradition, you are supposed to read those texts. That is the Swadhyaya. We are supposed to know Suppose I am a Yajurvedi, which I am, of course. I am supposed to read Yajurveda. At least, I mean, in olden days, of course, they knew it by heart. They knew it by heart. There is a very, very interesting article by Ambedkar, suddenly, which I recall, The Decline and Fall of Buddhism. You can just Google it and Google search it and get it. The decline and fall of Buddhism. Because when in the 10th century, when all these invaders came, the Arabic invaders came, they in a very systematic manner wiped out. They tried to wipe out all the religious, the priestly class. So they successfully did it in the case of Buddhists. And then several Buddhists, of course, at that time, they ran and took shelter in Tibet. It is a historical fact. It is borne out in history. Very recently also I read another book called what is that? The Empires of the Word, W-O-R-D word, a language history of the world. In that book, that writer, he writes how very many Sanskrit scholars in 10th century, 10th, 11th century, in the beginning of that Muslim invasion, they ran for their lives and then they took shelter in Tibet. They took shelter in Tibet. So like that, many of our scholars, both Buddhist and also Hindu scholars, they ran and took shelter in Tibet at that time. So, but anyway, what Ambedkar tells is, in those days, they could finish off the Buddhists because Buddhists, there was a very clear priestly class. There were some huge establishments, very huge libraries, very huge records, etc. And then all those Buddhist monks who were well read, all those people were eliminated. But whereas when it came to Hindus, every fellow was knowing Veda. How many people can they kill? They just could not kill because there is no perceptible head as a head or something like that. Every fellow, suppose you are a Rigvedi, you knew Rigveda, somebody else knew Samaveda, somebody else knew some other Veda. And till even today there are several scholars who know all the Shastras by heart. Even today, if you go to places like Sringeri or Kanchi, you see some scholars who know this Tarka Shastra by heart, who know Mimamsa by heart, then who knows all this Kena Upanishad and also even a lot of Bhashyam also by heart. So there are several such people even today. So like that, they could not wipe out. So that is what this Ambedkar writes in that very beautiful thing. So I just suddenly recalled, that is because this Swadhyaya, the word Swadhyaya, it digressed. From that word Swadhyaya, we digressed. So this Svadhyaya is something to be done compulsorily by a person. So these are the Panchamaha Yajnas. So these are compulsory things which a person has to do. Then there are certain recommended activities in the Vedas. So recommended activities means, okay, if you want yajna, you do this. If you want sun, you do this. If you want rain, you do this. If you want some good crop, you do this. If you want wealth, you do this. So there are various prescriptions. Something like a shop. So Veda, somebody said, one Swamiji said, Veda is something like a big mall. So where you, whatever you want, you will get. So that is it. Mall, and also it tells you beyond the mall. So that is the thing. Then there are other things which are prohibited karmas. That is called a Nishiddha karma. So these three types of activities. So when you come to this in this say Nitya karma is something which is compulsory. That is Sandhya Vandana, your Sandhya Upasana, and then this Panchamaha Yajnas, the fivefold Yajnas which I said. Then there are certain other things which are also supposed to do Naimittika karma. Suppose there is an Ekadashi. On that Ekadashi day you have to observe fast. On an Amavasya day you have to do Pitru Tarpanam. That is giving some Tarpanam to the forefathers, etc. So then suppose there is a Navaratri. During that Navaratri you are supposed to do some Ramayana Parayanam or Bhagavata Parayanam. So these are the things which were Naimittika karmas. Then Kamya karma I just explained, Nishiddha karma. From Kamya karma you get some Punya. Nishiddha karma you get some Papam, that is the negative fallout. Positive fallout is a Punya, negative fallout is Papam. Then why do you think that Veda has prescribed all these things? Because unless some such direction is there, there will be no difference between man and an animal. There will be no direction to man as to what sort of activity he has to do in a society. There will be just no guidance. So just to guide a man, just to guide the whole society, to see that whole society, because the society again is interdependent. Every fellow is dependent on every other fellow. So in order to establish that structure, they devised all these methods, and then they gave this, suggested all these things. Then what about this result of this karma? this result of these karmas, sometimes it is immediate and most of the time it is not immediate. Sometimes it is immediate means you want some wealth or you want something, you want some say rain or you want some good crop, etc. That is seen in this life. But then something else, if it is some swarga, it is not seen in this life, it is only seen after say death only. So that punyam or papam is there after death. Then, so this is the general structure. So then we saw another word called Dakshina Marga. Dakshina Marga, that is southward journey. We saw this word here, Karmani Dakshina Marga Pravurtaye. They contribute to or they will work out for a southward journey. What is this southward journey? So our books, they talk about one thing called southward journey and another thing called northward journey. There is no such thing as south or north in the whole, say, this whole cosmos, isn't it? If we take the whole cosmos, there is no southward or northward. These are basically symbolic. So this karma path, if you are only interested in that karma, if you are only interested in a ritual and then going to some heaven, etc., etc., then okay, that karma will give you result. You will just go to that particular loka and then again you will come back. So this is an eternal cycle which goes on and on. So this is what is called a southward journey. The southward journey means you will get, of course, you will go to some higher loka, you will go to Chandraloka. All these people who do all these things, they are supposed to go to Chandraloka. So there they enjoy for some time and then they return. That is what is called Dakshina Marga. Then Uttara Marga, or the northern path, as they say, it is supposed to be a superior path. That happens only when, along with this karma, you also do some upasana. Karma may or may not be there, but upasana has to be there. Upasana is what we discussed in the last class, that is worshipping a particular God form, trying to elevate yourself. You have gone beyond that particular, say what is this, say material wants and all that, and then you have just slightly elevated yourself and then you are in that particular stage. So that will lead to what is called Uttara Marga. That is, you go to a particular Devaloka and in that Devaloka, this particular person, he will attain knowledge and then he will get liberated. Here, of course, I have to explain one more thing. When I say that after the fall of the body, he is going to some loka and then coming back, or after the fall of the body, he is going to a Devaloka, who is going? That is again a question. Who is going? So the question, the answer is, there is what is called the gross body, there is what is called the subtle body. There are two things. One is called a gross body and what is called the subtle body. This gross body is physical body, which is blood, bones, flesh, etc., etc. This is the gross body. The subtle body is the mind, the sense organs, the 5 senses which we have. So the mind, senses and the life force, this vital force. So these and also the good or bad karmas which we have done, that karma phala. I told you that karma phala is there in your account, in your spiritual account. There in your spiritual account, there is a negative thing and there is a positive thing, debit and credit. So those things will be there. So that karma phalam, also all these things put together, they are called the subtle body. So this subtle body, it goes and then it is there. Whether it goes or not, of course, that again we have to, unless you listen to Gita Bhashya, you will not know the completely. But in this small class, I cannot give a complete picture on that. But this subtle body is said to go to that loka and then it will return. Then in this northern journey or northern path, this subtle body goes to that divine, say loka or divine state of existence, and in that divine state of existence, it gets enlightened. It gets enlightened with the grace of that particular, say, deity whom you are worshipping. So that is what happens. So in the case of Dakshina Marga, because the person has only been interested in material results, either here or say afterlife, so he only again keeps on returning to this earth. Whereas in this other path, because he is trying to, he has worked hard to elevate his mind, elevated his sensibility, then he goes to that particular loka and then he is enlightened there. So that is what we have seen. We see in what is this in the whole structure. So a question may come, why are you telling about all this karma when I am asking you about jnana? Upanishad, the very basic question is jnana, isn't it? Upanishad, in the Upanishads, the question is about this Brahma jnana, knowledge of the self, isn't it? Then a question will arise, why are you telling about all these things? Why can't you totally give up all these things, and then why you just keep quiet? You do not do anything, just keep quiet and then don't do anything, and then you will automatically get moksha. You don't desire for anything, you just go to a forest, just sit idle and then eat some fruits there and then be contented, and then no puja, no devatarchana, no yajnam, no yagam, and then you just keep quiet. So the Vedanta says it is not like that, because if you choose not to do any activity, that is also an activity. Akarma is also a karma. By just keeping quiet is also a karma, isn't it? So just by keeping quiet, you can't escape it, because there is what is called some past karma and all that. In the previous lives also there is some karma, and that previous lives again, whatever karma is there, that will again continue to act, and it will continue to give rise to this the cycle of birth and death. So that keeping quiet by not doing karma simply does not work out. Then what is it that we are supposed to do? Then the books suggest, okay, you do what is called nishkama karma. Why we see, that is what we see in the Gita. The Gita, the one important teaching of the Gita is nishkama karma. Nishkama karma means, that is, you do the particular activity. Nishkama karma, again we have to recall that when we are using this word, we should not refer to office work and we should not refer to paycheck. Nishkama karma does not mean that you have to come to office and then you have to do work like a slave and then go back without a paycheck. It is not in that context. Nishkama karma, or the very word karma in Vedanta, whether it is nishkama or sakama, is referring to some ethical activity where there is a social interface, where you are doing some good or bad to the society. So that is what that is what comes into picture. So you are referring to that particular karma, whether it is a nishiddha karma or a recommended activity or a prohibited activity in the Vedas or in the scriptures. So that is there. That is where we are. Then what is this nishkama karma? Nishkama karma means what we saw in that Gita Bhashyam. You have to do karma or activity in such a way that you will not get the result of that, the fruit of that action. That is yoga karmasu kaushalam. That is what we read there. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. It is a wonderful statement. I don't remember the shloka number, etc. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. That karma yoga is the ability to get rid of the result of the fruit of action, though you are fully engaged in activity. You are doing a yajna. Normally that yajna will lead you to heaven, and then heaven means all heavenly pleasures, etc. Heaven means it is only an extension of the physical pleasures. All physical pleasures which we say don't have in this life, we visualize and then we do have in that say so-called heaven, isn't it? So heaven literally means an extension of all these physical pleasures, isn't it? So suppose you do with such a frame of mind that I do not want the fruit of this particular action. What I am doing is only for the benefit of humanity. I am doing this say yajna, I am propitiating these gods only for the welfare of mankind. I am doing it as an order from the Lord. So this is the mind, this is the say frame of mind with which that nishkama works. That is, when you are dedicating all your activities to the Lord, even you are during Sandhya Vandan, at the end of Sandhya Vandan, you also say a prayer. What is that? Tatsarvam Krishnarpanamastu or Ishwararpanamastu Kayena Vacha Manasendriyerva Buddhyatmanava Prakrute Swabhavat Karomi Yadyas Sakalam Parasmai Narayana Yati Samarpayame. What all activities I do, whether knowingly or unknowingly, I submit, I transfer all this account to Lord Krishna, Narayana, we say. That is, are you just transferring all your things, or what is it you are doing? It is not a mere transfer, it is not a question of transferring any such thing. When you say that you are acting, you are doing something as an order from the Lord, it means that, suppose the child says, you tell a child, the child whatever the child does, it is supposed to tell the parent. Suppose the child follows that thing. Then suppose the child gets good marks, so it proudly goes to the father and says, "Sir, Dad, you see I have got some very good marks." And suppose the child gets a 0 mark, and then suppose child does not tell. So then that is something which that is not proper, isn't it? She is supposed to tell that also. Or the child beats up somebody in the class, you will not proudly tell it before your father. So likewise, a human being also, suppose a human being does some bad deed, so he will not say Krishnarpanamastu. Suppose you go to some casino or you cheat somebody or you do some other evil deed, you will not say Krishnarpanam. So in that manner, if you cultivate the habit of submitting your actions to the God or doing all actions as the order from the Lord, naturally very many bad activities will be eliminated. Naturally, all these bad activities will be eliminated, and that is exactly what is called purification of mind. Purity of mind or purification of mind. So that is what is purification of mind. With that, Ishwararpana Drushti. Then there is another point also in this Nishkama Karma. A human being is a part of this universe. Every minute he is dependent on this universe. Every minute our whole body is dependent on it. When I am sitting here, I am breathing air which is here. I am breathing air, and then I just consumed some tea, and then I am taking water. Without breathing air, we can't even survive for a few minutes. Without taking water, you can't survive for a couple of days. Without taking food, you can't survive beyond a few days. So the whole body is dependent on the whole universe. So this body which is called the individual or Vyakti or Vyashti, this is supposed to work for the Samashti. It is supposed to work for the aggregate. It is supposed to work for the whole cosmos. So that is the spirit in this Nishkama Karma. This Vyashti is supposed to contribute to the Samashti for the cosmic, for the total welfare of humankind. The person is supposed to act. So that is another thing. This thing is repeatedly told in Bhagavad Gita. Loka Sangraha, by using that word Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha is welfare of humanity, and also being a role model for others. Lokasya Vanmarga Pravrutti Nivaranam Loka Sangraha, Shankaracharya says. That is, you are giving such a positive image, you are being such a good role model, you are preventing many others from going astray. So that is what is Loka Sangraha. You are doing some exemplary works. So that is what is Loka Sangraha. So these are the points which we see in this word Nishkama Karma. When we see this word Nishkama, so that is the meaning of Nishkama Karma. When a modern man, when he listens to this word Nishkama Karma, he really gets agitated. What is this Nishkama Karma? Are we not supposed to get results? Are we not supposed to achieve our targets? You are supposed to achieve your targets. In that, Veda does not interfere. In fact, Veda says, you please earn money. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, all these things are accepted, and according to Dharma, in the dharmic way, you please earn money. And the Upanishad repeatedly says, not this Upanishad, but the other, Taittiriya says, Bhutyaina Pramaditavyam. Bhuti means, that is wealth, prosperity. Bhutyaina Pramaditavyam. You are not supposed to show any type of laziness or ashraddha regarding your vibhuti, your that bhuti or plenty, plenitude, that say wealth. You are supposed to acquire wealth. So that is what repeatedly several Vedic scriptures say. So we should not think that Nishkama Karma always says that you should be something like a sannyasi or a monk, giving up everything. It's not like that. You please earn money. That is what it says. Earn money in a dharmic way, in accordance with the dharma, in accordance with ethics. So that is what it says. So here, of course, when we say this Nishkama Karma, it also implies that merely sitting quiet in a corner will not lead to Chitta Shuddhi. Be active in this world. Be active in this world. Do all activities in this world. Do all activities which contribute to the welfare of society. Do all positive acts, and then acquire Chitta Shuddhi. So this is something called a dynamic virtue. It is that a virtue should be dynamic and active, and not something which is there somewhere in a cool, sequestered way of life, as some poet said. It is not in such a cool, say, isolated. You are not supposed to be in some island and then the Chitta Shuddhi will not be there, or purity of mind is not there, when you are just isolating yourself or physically tying yourself in bonds and wearing some chastity belt. There is one film also called Chastity Belt. In olden days, there also used to be a habit of, particularly in the Arabian countries, there was a practice of this chastity belt. So like that, anyway, I will now, you can refer to that in the Google. So like that, that is not Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi means being actively in this world, doing all activities which are prescribed for you, and do it in such a way that you are doing it as an order from the Lord, and then you are doing with an Ishwararpana Buddhi. And when you do that, you are not getting the result of that. You will not get the punyam of that. You are only avoiding, trying to avoid that spiritual merit. Why are you avoiding that? Because that punyam also has to be avoided as seriously as papam. Because punyam also will give you birth. Punyam also will give you birth, and again in another birth you have to do some more things. We do not know at that time whether you will do some good things or bad things. So the basic thing which is suggested in the text is, this human life is an opportunity for you to know yourself, to know about the supreme reality, and then become that. So that is what Vedanta says. So this is the karma bhumi. This human body now is the karma bhumi. Karma bhumi means this is the plane of action. Karma is action. Bhumi means plane or level. This is the plane of action. Otherwise, the other bhumis, they are not planes of action. Suppose somebody gets birth as an animal, that is not a plane of action. Somebody gets birth as a tree, it is not a plane of action. The only plane of action or karma bhumi is the human life. So that is what it says. Our virtue or our activity should be a dynamic virtue and not something which is there in a say isolated island or something like that. So that is it. Then the same question again, why are we talking about karma? When the question subject is moksha, that is the basic question, isn't it? Then what Vedanta says is, moksha is possible only by viveka. Viveka means discrimination, proper discrimination, to analyze things with a pure, calm mind. You should have that pure, calm mind in order to analyze what is right, what is wrong. Otherwise, when the mind is tormented by so many desires, dragged here and there, your mind will not have the patience to do viveka. So, this moksha is possible only by viveka, and that vivekam is only possible by chitta shuddhi, that purity of mind. Unless the pure mind is pure, then you will not have any, the same, even ordinary examples they hold. Because, for example, suppose at the time of examination, you have got so many types of problems in your house, you cannot concentrate on your examination. So it is as simple as that. When you are trying to do this moksha, you are trying to liberate yourself from all these bonds, you have to do proper viveka. And that viveka is possible only when you get rid of all your bonds. Slowly you have to get rid of, say you have to do this nitya, anitya vastu viveka, and slowly think of the futility of all these things, realize the futility. And this viveka should be, this jnanam is something which is born out of, say, proper analysis only, and not otherwise. So, for that, chitta shuddhi is required, and the example given is that of a glass, surface of a mirror. Suppose you want to capture, say you want some reflection of the sun. Suppose the mirror is very, very dirty, you cannot get any reflection. So, you have to jolly well clean the mirror, surface of the mirror in order to get a reflection. So cleaning the mind is like cleaning the surface of a mirror, and that mirror also should not be shaking here and there. Like you take a camera, your hands should not be shaking. The mirror also should be clean, and also should be firm. So this is called nirmalatvam, purity. Purity is nirmalatvam, that is absence of all dirt and all that. Nischalatvam, the mind should not be wavering, it should not be getting dragged here and there. So these are the two things which we see here in Vedanta. So this Brahmajnana needs such a mind. Unless, and this Brahman is supposed to reflect on such antahkarana. This Jnanam is supposed to reflect on such antahkarana. So ultimately what we see is, this thing called Brahmajnanam or knowledge which we are talking is not an intellectual accomplishment. Suppose you read some 10 books and then all these books and then write down notes and then you use some very very big words which are there in all these Vada Granthas. Vada Granthas, they use very very elaborate terminology. So suppose you are doing only that. That is not Brahmagyana. Brahmagyana is realizing that you are that, and then really shaking off all the bonds and really living in peace. A Jnani, suppose somebody says, I am a very big Jnani, and then he is jealous of another Jnani. He is jealous of another Jnani because he knows more words, more verbiage, more terminology. So such a man cannot be called a Jnani. A person can be called a Jnani only when he is cool, composed, not artificially, but naturally. Suppose I am cool and composed like a villain. Not like that. A villain also can be a very, very consummate villain, as they say, a very consummate villain, a very, very trained villain. Not like that. A person should be natural. That is what is called innocence. Innocence, that is, that sort of innocence is required in Brahmagyana. So the Brahmagyani stays in such sort of innocence. So this is what we see about karma in our text. So what we have seen here is karma is one, Nishkama karma is a higher level, and compared to Nishkama karma, this upasana also is a higher, upasana is a higher level, because though you are doing Nishkama karma, what is it that you are warding off? You are warding off the punya of this janma. What about the punya papa baggage of the previous janmas? It is still there. So the punya papa baggage of the old janmas will go only by jnanam. So for that you have to do some upasana. You have to go to a devaloka. That you means that subtle body goes to particular divine state of existence, and in that divine state of existence it gets enlightened. So that is what is our what the Vedanta structure is about. So in that upasana marga, or that is what is called the northern path or uttara marga, you go there and then you become enlightened. So then for jnani, there is no question of any gati. Of course, we need not discuss all that. That we discussed in detail in Gita Bhashya. So this is what we see here. So with this introduction, we will go back to the text. So here now we understand that this karma and upasana, when properly performed, it will contribute to sattva shuddhi, that is called purification of mind. In the case of a person, that is nishkama and mumukshu. Nishkama is somebody who has given up, who is doing nishkama karma, and then who is also desirous of keen on brahmagyana. Then for the one who is asking for all these results and who is not doing any upasana, kevalani srautani karmani, or kevala karmani, that is only karmas, he is only confining himself, his sphere of activity is only karma. So for him only dakshina marga, he just goes up and then comes down, goes up and comes down, like that rotating wheel. Dakshina marga pratipatti. Then swabhavikya to ashastriyaya pravritya, that is all these base instincts. Of course they are not mentioned because there is no need to mention the karma. It only says all these people who are doing all these unrecommended or prohibited deeds, they get say very unworthy lives. Unworthy lives means born as a dog or a pig or something like that, or something like a tree. So that is what we have seen. Adhogati syat. We read up to this point. Let us read further. We have a lot of time, I suppose. Okay. Athaitayoho pathoho na katarena cha na tanimani kshudrani asakrudavartini bhutani bhavanti jayasva mriyasva Ityetat trutiyagam sthanam. So this is a line from Chandogya Upanishad. This is the fifth Khanda of Chandogya Upanishad. So that is Athaitayoh pathorna katarena chatana natani mani shudranyasa krudavartini bhutani bhavanti. So that is, we have now talked about two paths. Atha yetayoh pathoho, that is between these two paths. etayoho pathoho, between these two paths, na katarena cha, not in either of these things, tani imani kshudrani asakurdavartini bhutani bhavanti. So those people who indulge in just sensual pleasures, who follow their basic instincts, who follow their natural instincts and then natural impulses, let us say natural impulses and instincts, so they cannot get either the Dakshina Marga or the Uttara Marga. So even this Dakshina Marga man is not such a condemned man, because he is doing something which is approved by Shastra, which is approved or sanctioned by Shastra, but then he is selfish. That's all. He is just selfish. But he is doing an approved, activity only. Another man who is not selfish, doing an approved activity or not doing an approved activity, but then who is also doing some upasana. So that is what we saw. So these two paths are not for somebody who is following all these basic instincts, base impulses. So that is it. Atha etayoho pathoho na katarena cha, not one of these, not either of these, na katarena cha, na tani imani kshudrani, kshudrani bhutani, all these petty, unworthy creatures. Kshudra means something which is little, kshudra means very, very little, unworthy things, maybe mosquitoes, ants, something like that, or some petty animals. So kshudrani bhutani bhavanti asakrut avartini, asakrut avarti. Asakrut means several times. Sakrut means once, asakrut means several times. Avartini means just rotating. They go and come back, go and come back. They are born, do something, die, then again come back. They are born, do something, and then again go and come back. So that is asakrut avartini. Like that, that wheel, what is that wheel? That water, pumping wheel. In olden days we used to have. So something like that. Then what is their motto? Jayasva Mriyasva iti etat trutiyagam sthanam. Jayasva Mriyasva. Jayasva is, this is second person singular. You, referring to the person. Jayasva. You be born and you die. Jayasva Mriyasva. Be born and die. Be born and die. So that is the thing. So the Jayasva Mriyasva iti etat Trutiyagam Sthanam. This is the third place. Trutiyagam Sthanam is third place. That is the most condemned place. So that is what it says. Then Prajaha Tisro Atyaya Miyuhu Iticha Mantra Varnat. So this Mantra Varna means this particular line, a portion of that mantra is said to be from Aitareya Aranyakam. There is one Upanishad called Aitareya Upanishad also. Then Aitareya Aranyakam, there is a Aranyaka portion and Upanishadic portion. We know that mantra portion is different, Aranyaka portion is different, and from Aranyaka this Upanishad is an improved version of that Aranyaka is Upanishad. So this Aitareya Aranyakam says, Prajaha Tisraha Atyaya Miyuhu. That is, those three types of jantus. Praja does not mean people. Praja, prakashena jayante. That is, they are just born in multitudes. That is, they are just born like ants. They are just born like ants in ant hills. So, prajaha, tisraha, three types of prajaha. What are they? Of course, here, it is not mentioned here. Anandagiri, in his commentary, he mentions there are these three types: Jarayuja, Andaja, Udbhija, he says. Anandagiri's commentary. Jarayuja is those which are born out of womb. Jarayu is womb. That all these animals, say for example a cow, something like a deer or some other horse, dog, whatever it is, they are all born from the womb. Then Andaja, born from the eggs. Born from the egg means it can be a bird, it can be snake, it can be all types of reptiles and birds. Then Udbhija. Udbhija is something which is born out of say this earth, ground. They just break the ground and come out. Udbhija actually means breaking the ground and coming out. That is all types of earthworms and all types of insects which we find in earth. So all these people who deviate from the prescribed path and then follow their natural instincts, they get this type of birth. So that is the meaning here. Prajaha Tisraha Atyaya Miyuhu. Ati Ayam Iyuhu. That is Atiyuhu. That is those who deviate from this path, those who deviate from this prescribed path, they will not get either Dakshina Marga or Uttara Marga. They will only get this type of stupid birth, like some animal or some say reptile or something like what is that, Udbija, something which is some insect on in the ground, so in the earth. Iticha mantra varnat. So I think we will stop here. Vishuddha Tattvasya we will take in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.